Okay, guys, being I'm a little behind schedule, I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start off, though, with our DA, George Brockler. He's going to have a few words with you, and then we'll move into our Parent Academy.
Thanks, man. Hey, thank you for letting me come, and I think this is set for an hour and a half, and I've been given just over an hour. My name is George Brockler. I'm the district attorney for the 18th Judicial District, and if you'll let me do just a little bit of education on where you're at, I always like people to leave here feeling like they're smarter about the government that represents them than when they got here. We're a big deal. When I say a big deal, we have 4 counties in this judicial district outside of Douglas County, and yes, this will be a lot like being in class. Does anybody know the other counties? Anyone? Who said Arapahoe? Arapahoe, that one's done. We got 2 others. No, I grew up in Jeffco. We thought about taking them over, but it's too messy. So we said no. 2 others. Rural county. Elbert and Lincoln. Boom, right there. Someone obviously read ahead in the homework. Thank you for doing that. Douglas, I'm sorry, you're following me around,
Yes.
by the way, because he's afraid I'm going to shoplift.
Yeah.
No, it's for the microphone. Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln. That is 1 million Coloradans. That is more than 1 in 6 Coloradans in the most diverse jurisdiction probably in this part of the country. We have everything from the 40,000-acre ranches out in Lincoln to all the issues that you might see in a more urban setting in parts of Aurora. So while Aurora may have million-dollar homes, they also have human trafficking, narcotics, gangs, and those issues. And then we have these exploding suburbs down where we live. I live in Douglas County. This is my county. My kids go to public school with your kids. In fact, our sons are friends and go to school together also. It's important for you to know that because when we talk about school issues, this isn't some distant memory for me or my kids go to some super highly protected private school where we don't worry about this. That is not true. My kids are in school with your kids. I am the first district attorney we've ever had from Douglas County. They've all come from Arapahoe otherwise. So what I wanted to do briefly was to introduce you to me and also tell you that the goal of all of these programs is to keep your sons and daughters from ever showing up in a place where they meet my employees. That's the goal, right? Is to keep you out of court. But I want to reassure you about this. Our juvenile system in the state of Colorado is designed, and I don't want this to sound trite, for the juvenile brain. We get kids do stupid things. And for many of you, you realize that for boys, that lasts until 25. If you ask my wife, she'd say 49. But so this system is way different than the adult system. It has an entirely different title, Title 19 instead of Title 18. It is designed to put on par with public safety the best interests of the child. We don't do that at the adult setting. You cross that threshold from 17 to 18, we treat you differently. And that becomes more permanent. So our goal is to try to keep kids from coming in to see us, but if they do, that's not the end of it. We have the most robust, best diversion program in the state of Colorado. When I say best, that is a measure of metrics where I say 7% recidivism rate. To put that in perspective, probation is hovering around a 50 to 60% recidivism rate. So when we get kids in this system, we try to keep them out of the courts and provide them with whatever wraparound services we need, along with your intimate involvement, to try to make sure they don't come back into the system at all, ever. That's a focus of ours. What I'd like to do, though, is to the extent that you have questions, and I know there's a bunch of other better topics to cover here, but I know you don't get a chance to access your district attorney all that often, especially on juvenile or school issues, but I want you to feel comfortable asking me, what about this? What about that? What do we do with these kinds of issues? How can my kid expect to deal with this, that, or the other? I would like to answer those. Any questions at all? Ma'am in the back.
You mentioned wraparound services. Isn't that a term for a specific service?
When I say that, we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach to diversion. We have specific counselors. They're usually licensed clinical social workers or some other advanced degree professionals in mental health or otherwise. And they will do an assessment with the juvenile along with their parent or parents and try to figure out where is that thing that is putting them in a position to be vulnerable and make bad decisions. And especially with guys, and I know I'm harping on guys because I am one, but as you know, one teenage boy is dumb two teenage boys are dumber, and there's like this synergistic negativity that takes place where if you can get 5 or more together, they revert to caveman status. You know what I mean? They just start making crazy decisions because they all look at each other and go, that sounds great. I don't know why we wouldn't break in there. It's just sitting there, locked. Why wouldn't we go in? You know, that kind of thing. So when I say wraparound services, it's not going to be the same thing for every kid. It'll be specific to their issue. And that might be, honestly, marijuana. Could be some other drug addiction. It could be some other abuse or trauma that they've suffered. We really try to figure out what is it that's putting them in a position to make these bad decisions. Any other questions about this? Don't fear the man. That's what I'm saying. The other thing I want to tell you is this text-to-tip thing is real. Now, they're safe to tell around the state. There's a good program. Text-to-tip is better. That's ours, the Douglas County program. I presume you're going to talk about that. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, but if you guys remember anything about that, am I going to steal your thunder by talking about it?
Nope, go ahead.
Mountain Vista, you guys remember the Mountain Vista? That only gets discovered when it does because somebody had the guts to text information that put the good guys on the trail of chasing us down. If that text-to-tip doesn't get sent, I truly can't tell you where it goes or where it ends up. And that was super scary, but also I think promising for this. So to the extent that you can empower your kids to think of it less in terms of snitching and more in terms of this is about your friend's protection, your protection. You're not doing this to get someone in trouble. You're doing this to make a positive difference for you and your friends so that you don't have to confront some of this trauma that we've seen elsewhere. As you know, we still have the STEM stuff that we're dealing with. I can't go into details about it, but it's just going to take a long time to resolve. Chances are it won't get resolved. I can't believe I'm saying this till I'm out of office, which is disappointing for me because I want to see this thing through. But that's just the slow process that we have in the court system. And there's good reason for it, but it's just really slow and very difficult to appreciate when you're on the outside. Anything else I could ever answer for you? I don't normally get the opportunity to talk to a lot of parents. This is a great turnout, by the way. Fantastic. If you do have questions, call the district attorney's office and ask for George. I have deliberately discriminated against hiring people with the name George. So you could always there are no others, just me. So reach out to me and I'd be happy to have that conversation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, with the, like, safe to tell, text to tip, all the different crisis hotlines and everything like that. The schools are not required to post any of this stuff, like offer different things for the students. It's totally the school's choice on what they want to bring in. And the only reason why I know this is because I went to the Douglas County mental health meetings and stuff like that, and I'm attending those. So it did come up that the schools aren't required to really offer any of those programs. Are you guys working towards trying to change that?
Yeah, we're always working with the school district. They all have autonomy to do what they want in each school because each school is kind of its own little community. Right. And that's always something that we're always working on to try to make it more universal across the board. So that is something we're always working towards. We're always in contact with the school district on trying to make that happen.
Okay. You may have answered that before I was late, obviously. My son turned in a little girl for cutting last year, and she had told the entire table that she was doing it. Look at my pretty arms. He was the only kid that talked to an adult. So how do you handle those kids that don't say anything?
Yeah, look, I think we have to encourage not just kids, but adults too, to be less siloed in their thinking. We see this with adults too, right? Bad things happen and we're like, well, I'm not going to get involved. Someone else is going to, I'm not going to get involved. We really have to have, I think, a re-engagement on what community means and how a better person would take an interest in someone not to get them into trouble, but to offer them help. And it's what you'd expect someone to do if your son was cutting on himself and you didn't know, right?
And we do the same thing in our curriculum. I can tell you in our curriculum we have those specific discussions. So we talk about how you can approach text-to-tip being one of those. You don't have to be, coming right out in the open. You can do it anonymously because that is truly anonymous. I mean, we don't know who it's coming from. And you're talking directly to an SRO through text-to-tip. That's why it's a better system.
And they're on the other side, and he came to me instead of coming to the teacher.
Well, and that's just it. We give them all the different avenues. You're going to see I'm going to have some of the different hotlines. I'm going to have some different sources, resources for the kids to go to. Because we know they're not always going to come to us. They're not always going to go to Text-to-Tip. It might be you. It might not be you, because how many of you have had a disagreement with your child? Every one of us. So that's just it. They might be going to somebody else, but we want to know who that trusted adult is. Is it a coach? Is it a teacher? Is it your aunt, your uncle? Who is it? So we have all those discussions.
Anything else you guys got questions about firearms and stuff like that? Can I take 30 seconds to soapbox something here? Look, I just wrote this opinion piece that got out online, and I just want to tell you a couple things that concern me about our laws, and you can talk to your legislators and community leaders about this. We have laws that say can't give a kid a handgun. And if you do give a kid a handgun, it's a felony. It's a probation-eligible felony, but it's a felony. If you give a kid an AR-15, it's a misdemeanor. That does not make any sense. That does not make any sense. And so amongst a whole bunch of things that are problems with our laws that seek to keep guns out of the wrong hands, and that is a good focus, right? We don't want convicted felons, domestic violence perpetrators, and juveniles to have guns because we don't trust their decision-making when they have them. That's really what it comes down to. We have tremendously weak laws in all those areas. But that one in particular makes no sense to me at all. A Derringer felony, AR-15 misdemeanor. So the one other thing I would put in your head that these guys won't talk about, but I will. I am a big fan of walking dogs through the schools, maybe even when the students aren't there, to try to find out what's going on in some lockers when we know kids are making bad decisions. There is not tremendous support, in my opinion, from the school board on that issue. I know these guys would do it if they were asked to do it. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm telling you from a public safety standpoint, my kids are in these public schools. I want law enforcement to be in there trying to find out where the weak link is that could lead to harm, either to an individual that isn't my kid or my kid. I want that. So if you guys stay engaged like you are right now, and you wouldn't be here other than the free lunch. No, I'm kidding. You wouldn't be here other than wanting to be engaged. Keep it up and keep putting pressure on your school board and law enforcement to keep our kids safe. That'd be great. Thank you for the time.
All right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
that,
George.
buddy. Yeah,
Yep.
thanks, man.
Take care.
Thank you.
So I will jump right into our Parent Academy. I'm going to cover kind of the topics that we cover, all three of them. I do need to thank a few people. First off, for the food. We have Castle Pines Rotary. We also have Denver Springs that supported us. Castle Pines been supporting us since our inception back in 2009. We are the Y.E.S.S program, Youth Education Safety in Schools, but you're also going to see or hear me say DFI periodically. That's our national site. Y.E.S.S is our local nonprofit within Douglas County. We did go national. We have over 1,000 instructors teaching our program now throughout the United States. I just spoke in Dallas last week at Crimes Against Children. We're currently going to be picking up Australia and Mexico. We are in Germany already. We're in Norway. We're in Canada. So our program is expanding. We are very successful. We're doing the right things here in Douglas County, and there's a reason why it's going nationwide. Yeah, I'm sure hoping for the Australia one. I'm waiting for that one to come up. So anyway, I'm going to jump right into this. We're going to cover the relationships. We'll jump into digital stuff, and then I'm going to talk about substance use. When it comes to relationships, we know we all had relationships and stuff growing up. They're very similar, but there's the nuances around devices and social media, and what that nuance is, I'll get into it in relationships. All these things tie in together. Where are kids getting their drugs? Well, they're getting it through digital stuff. Where are kids developing the relationships? Well, that's back to digital as well. They're asked out or dumped through a text, all that kind of stuff. So all of this stuff is kind of intertwined somehow, some way, so we're going to kind of get into that. When it comes to the relationships, this is kind of what we cover, social conformity or peer pressure. He actually talked about it. You're going to see it right in this first video that I'm going to play, how kids' minds are entirely different than adult, how one person or a group of kids totally changes the way a teen's going to think, and it's not the same for an adult. Bullying, conflict, kindness, harassment, sexual harassment, consent. It is one of our laws now, school district-wide. When we're going to talk about sex or sexual type activity, the big key is consent. We've been talking about consent, I can tell you, since 2009, but we are more specific and we have it in every grade level. We have dating violence versus a healthy relationship. So here it is. Understanding the teen brain is really what we need to understand.
Alex is deciding whether to put speed ahead of safety while he's alone in the scanner. But that, as far as Alex believes, is about to change.
Hey Alex, how you doing? I have watching you play the next round of tasks, so they're going to talk to you a little bit, okay?
Hey, Alex, you still alive in there? Nice.
Hey Alex, it's Paul. How's it going? I'm good, man. Good luck. You're never gonna be watching me.
Actually, they won't. But Alex doesn't know that. As far as he's concerned, his friends are watching his every choice.
Crash. Thing.
Is it my imagination, or is he having a few more crashes this time?
No, he is having more crashes, and that's what we find, that when adolescents play this game, they crash more often when they know their friends are watching them than they do when they're by themselves.
What happens with adults when they're with friends or alone? Is there that much difference with adults?
There's no difference at all
Really?
in how they behave or in their patterns of brain activity. So when adults are alone and adolescents are alone, they look very similar. It's when you put adolescents with their friends that their behavior and their brain pattern changes.
The brain pattern change is in the regions that respond to reward, principally in an area called the ventral striatum. When young people are alone playing the game, the ventral striatum remains quiet. But with friends around, it lights up.
During adolescence, peers are so important that their presence activates the brain's reward circuitry, and that makes adolescents, under that condition, pay more attention to the potential rewards of a risky choice and less attention to the potential downside.
Oh, bravo, you did a great job. Your friends are proud of you. Just don't get in the car with them. I've always assumed teenagers drive dangerously because friends in the car actively distract them. But just thinking the friends are watching and observing, not even passing judgment positively on their behavior.
It's something about the inherent rewarding value of people your age when you're an adolescent. And I think this has implications for understanding adolescent criminal behavior as well. Adolescents are much more likely than adults to commit crimes when they're in groups. And this research, I think, suggests that one of the reasons that happens is that this effect of peers on reward sensitivity may also play a role in adolescents' judgment and decision-making when they're in potentially criminal situations.
So either George watched the video before he came in, or he just was psychic. My whole thing is, guys, he was right on target. Guys, that's what one of our new videos that we just put out this year, really to get kids to understand, but more importantly, to get you to understand as parents. They are kids. They don't think the same way as we do. They're going to think entirely different. This is why social media, again, it's just a thought of somebody watching them. Well, are there a lot of people watching each other on social media? Absolutely. So there's a reason why there's a huge curve going on there, and I'll get into that. The conformity, the social reward, they went into all that, how basically they're going to be more likely to do risky behavior just because of that reward system in their brain. So the thought of others watching them, again, that's why this whole social media thing is so influential. We talk a lot about conflict and harassment. When we cover the harassment, we don't want the kids running, saying they're committing harassment. We want to talk about the differences, what conflict actually is. It's non-repeated. It's not criminal. It's typically, based off somebody's needs, interests, or concerns. And when we get into those differences, when we talk about relationships. But we want to overcome differences. We get into tolerance. It's a thing I call TAR. Tolerance, acceptance, and resiliency. You're going to hear me say that a lot because we cover it in all three topic matters. Kids have to be tolerant, be emotionally strong, understanding they're going to be okay no matter what. No matter what happens, what's going on. Who in this room thinks they're different and weird? Okay, we're all different and weird. We want kids to embrace that though too. For a kid, they don't like being different or weird. We try to encourage them to be different and weird, encourage that that's an okay thing. We want them to know that that's great, that it's great to be different and weird. That's one thing that, again, we get hung up on, especially kids, oh, I'm way different than my peers, or I'm not doing what's going on Instagram or Snapchat. Well, it's okay to not be doing what's going on Instagram and Snapchat because it's probably not great. So it's appreciating that difference and weirdness. It all comes down to, again, understanding that difference. Like in this case, the man doesn't see the snake, the woman doesn't see the rock. The woman believes, I'm going to fall, can't climb up due to the snake, why can't he just pull harder? Where the man is saying, well, I'm in so much pain, I'm pulling as hard as I can, why doesn't she just, climb up? The whole thing is about, again, that perception or perspective. We can't always see somebody's pressure they're under or what kind of pain they're going through. To understand this, guys, we got to start thinking differently, think of others, and communicate. And it's really what we're trying to, again, put across to the kids and getting parents to understand as well. Because it all comes down to 18.9.111. That is our harassment statute. I do highlight this stuff because we talk about this specifically with the kids. If you look at it, it's very similar to bullying. If your intent is to annoy somebody, get under their skin, they potentially could be doing that. If it's repeated, the repeated taunts, if they're threatening bodily injury, property damage, that threat alone could potentially put them down the path of committing the crime of harassment. To strike, shove, kick, or physically contact somebody. How many of you have seen or heard about that going on in school? We talk about that all the time. Again, repeated taunts through communication, and it also, the attachment to that was Kiana's Law, where cyberbullying became a thing. It's now a $750 fine and possibly 6 months in jail that your child could potentially face. And specific language, direct or indirect, they initiate that communication. It's any type of electronic medium. All that stuff was added thanks to Kiana's mom. Kiana was a former student of mine. Unfortunately, she tried to take her own life being cyberbullied primarily through the internet. At that time, it was Facebook that was really popular with the kids. And the oxygen was cut off from her brain. She now is confined to a wheelchair. She looks entirely different. It's pretty crazy to think that, and pretty sad that we had to create a law based off of that. And then sexual harassment. This is unwanted or unwelcome behavior, sexual in nature. It can be jokes, hurtful name calling, rumors. We talk about groping, brushing up against somebody. That's not a game. It's something that we have to be very attentive. Again, back to the boys, thinking it's okay to that girl that's developing in class to brush up against her and think that, oh, I accidentally did that. No, we don't play that game. So we get into that conversation with your kids in class. We talk about what groping is. Sexual harassment is a Title IX type thing. We talk about who they need to turn to. Title IX coordinator in your school is typically your counselor. That's who they need to be reporting that to if it's happening on school grounds. We get into that conversation. So if it interferes with school performance or creates a hostile or intimidating school environment, we want your kids to know this. We want your kids to understand it's not okay to do some of these activities that we get called to a lot of times as school resource officers or even as Y.E.S.S officers. So how do you know when someone's wanting to become intimate? We get into this. This is where we get into the consent talk. It's not assumed, coerced, implied, or where you're trying to convince somebody. It's where you ask. How many of you think it sounds awkward to ask somebody to kiss? Did any of you guys do that? No, but that's what we teach. We teach that it starts with an ask. Because how long does it take if you don't ask? You can be waiting all night for that kiss, waiting all night to wait for that body language or that look. Believe it or not, I ask kids to show me what that look might be like. I still have a kid that was in my class in 8th grade, and he still, when I see him out in public, when I work the AMC or off duty, he'll go, "Hey, Deputy Martin." I'm going, "Dude, you're creeping me out, stop." But my thing is they remember that though. Guys, they understand it. I can tell you my son, who just graduated from Castleview last year, he said that, "Dad, ask works." He goes, "I thought it was silly. I know you tell this to all the kids throughout Douglas County, but it works." He goes, "Because I'm paranoid, Dad. I'm scared that somebody's going to charge me for sexual harassment or something because I didn't ask." So guys, it's something we got to teach our kids. We need to ask, guy or girl. Because it's, again, consent was put into our laws this last year for a reason. And here's one of our videos that we play in one of our...
Consent is asking the other person for permission before you start any sexual activity. Consent is a verbal, voluntary yes, with everyone agreeing to the activity. And consent is done in person before the act and part of an ongoing conversation. If someone is drunk, high, or asleep, they cannot give consent. Pressuring someone into sexual activity does not mean you have consent. And not hearing a no does not mean you have consent. Be sure to pay attention to body language. Even if the other person verbally says yes, if their body language says no, you do not have consent. So how do you get consent? You ask for it. You say, "Is this okay with you?" Or, "Do you want to do this?" It might feel a bit awkward, but it's important to respect the other person's boundaries. Always ask for consent, and always respect the answer. And how do you give consent? You clearly agree by saying yes, or using another positive statement like, Sure, let's do this. So remember, yes means consent. And it's always okay to say no. You can also change your mind at any time. So even if you say yes, if at any point you start to feel uncomfortable, you can withdraw consent and say no. And no always means no. Sex without consent is sexual assault, and that is not cool. But communicating with the other person every time you take part in sexual activity and every time you change the type of sexual activity is cool. So always ask the question. Keep asking the question and respect the answer. And always make sure you and the other person both understand and agree to what you're doing. If you have any other questions about consent, be sure to talk to your parent, teacher, or a trusted adult.
There's one part that's been added, and I can tell you in elementary they talk about it from a hugging standpoint. So it's pretty generic. Like I said, it is by grade level. In high school, we're talking about it like a bike ride. So literally, if you hear your kids talking about a bike ride, you might want to double think that. Did they just go through our program? Because we do address it. I actually got it from the University of Nebraska, where they actually addressed it with my son, who's getting ready to go to the university. I'm actually taking him tomorrow to the university. So, yes.
Video that you just showed, what age is
That one is actually in our 8th grade unit. Yes. So wanting to have affection, it's natural to want that with your partner. The affection, again, is the best communication. That feeling is to ask for that consent. Realizing your partner may not be ready for that, respect their response. That was mentioned again in that video, but we again reiterate our videos after we play these with your children. Asking for affection when they're drunk or high, how that changes. You cannot get consent when they're under the influence. That is an entirely different ballgame. So if your partner happens to like to smoke pot or drink alcohol or is tapping into their parents, they cannot give consent. So we have to address that as well. Emotional grooming. We do talk about grooming, not dog grooming, not combing your hair. I obviously don't talk about combing your hair. Doesn't do any good for me. But the whole thing is the grooming. It's about carefully convincing or coaxing somebody into some form of behavior. When we're talking about relationships, again, it's typically sexual in nature that we are addressing it, but we also talk about the grooming perspective when you're with your friends. Who can be a groomer? Anybody. Male, female, can be male to male, female to female. We have it anyway. Anybody can be a groomer. We talk about it in our relationships as well as when we get into predators online, how predators groom your child potentially online. All this stuff involves around emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence or social emotional well-being is what we focus on. SEL is a primary thing across the United States. Every school district wants you to have social emotional learning because, guys, that's what's influencing your child. It is 80% of success, having emotional intelligence. So we talk about trust and secrecy. It gets involved again into our predator piece. They try to build trust with your child. It used to be we used to worry about the creepy old predator, but now, again, fellow teens have learned very predatory behaviors. A lot of it they're learning through online type activities. But the secrecy, again, they use those secrets to manipulate them once they build trust, after they create those similarities, making that, again, victim feel included. Your kids want to be included. Nobody wants to be excluded. Then we get into dating violence by the time they're in 8th grade. Obviously, we're not talking about that in elementary school or even in 7th grade. We get involved in that in 8th grade and 9th grade. We start talking about what dating violence actually looks like. Chaparral High School students actually created a bunch of scenarios for us. Did a really great job. We use those all the time. We play the scenario, and then the kids have to just figure out what kind of grooming was actually going on, what kind of abuse actually might have occurred, how you might work through that, and then eventually we get into how and do you know when your boundaries have been crossed, when it's time to end this relationship. We eventually get into that discussion because these high school students, we didn't tell them what scenarios to make. We actually said we wanted some just different videos about what happens in school, and they created all these videos from the double standard to all the way up to sexting. They created a video on sexting where the girl actually potentially could have ended up raped at the end of this scenario. So that's what they created because they know it's happening. They've seen it happen within their high school. So to avoid this abuse is, again, what we're trying to establish. How do you avoid it? How do you not become a victim to begin with? We talk about the honeymoon phase, how it starts off great, but again, how that honeymoon phase eventually comes back. The tension builds, and then there's that explosion. Then they apologize, and they think it'll never happen again, or they think that they're going to change that person, And we talk about that and how it goes back to the honeymoon stage for a while, then the tension builds. That's what domestic violence is. Why do we address that? Because as a cop, one of our, if not the number one crime is domestic violence that we respond to. Where does it start though? Well, it starts in their dating years. Middle school and high school. They start to learn these behaviors. They start to think that that's okay. It's what's been role modeled to them either online, through social media, through Netflix, through movies, all these different things. At home, possibly. Whatever might be going on in your own home. We got to be better role models all the way around as parents. So again, often believe they can change this person, but who can you truly change? Only yourself. And we get into that discussion as well. So we talk about all this stuff, again, in relationships. If you've been violated, don't ever blame yourself. Again, we try to give them people they can turn to. Tell that harasser to stop. Keep a list of it if it's through some type of a device, pictures. Again, your Title IX coordinator. Who is it you can report this to? Making sure they know who their counselor is. I ask kids in 7th grade and when they're in middle school, I say, do you know who your counselor is? If they don't, we talk about it right there in class so they know who their counselor is. Some of the different charges, there's indecent exposure, invasion of privacy. Unfortunately, we're seeing, especially females, going into bathrooms or locker rooms and thinking it's a joke to take pictures of people while they're in the bathroom or in the locker room changing. And they think it's a joke because it's between friends, but then eventually they're not friends anymore, and guess what happens? The pictures are all over. Unlawful sexual contact is just that. We're touching somebody inappropriately. Again, that groping that I mentioned. We get into that discussion, and then, well, sexual assault is our rape charge, where they have not asked for any consent. They basically had some type of penetration going on at that point. Those are discussions we get into, again, by the time they're in 8th and 9th grade. They aren't necessarily talked about. We build up to that as they get older, obviously. So it's about safety, feeling comfortable. We do talk about what the healthy side of relationship is. I actually ask kids, what are some differences you might have? And I tell them to think outside the box, like how religion might play into that. We don't talk specifically about religion, but we talk about how that might play into a relationship. How political views, how eating habits. What happens if you're dating a vegetarian? Where are you taking them out to eat? All those types of things. Some pretty silly conversations, but the kids, they say it was silly, but I said, how many of you think that's actually a really good conversation to have? And they all, oh yeah, that was actually pretty comfortable to talk about when we start talking about it in class. But having those connections, keeping the connections the same, we talk about, have that isolation. We talk about financial independence. I talk about the biggest night where that becomes a problem is prom night. A lot of money is spent on prom night. Is there an expectation at the end of the night? Why did they buy that hotel room? Was there the expectation you're having a party at that? Or were you having sex at this hotel room? All those conversations come up because that's one of the biggest nights that we see this thing. So it's all about being intimately safe. Always having the right to say no. I tell them I've actually arrested married couples for forcing themselves on their spouse. You cannot do that. If your spouse even tells you no, that means no. So knowing your boundaries, we actually go through boundary exercises. We actually have activities. I have the kids actually learn what personal boundaries are in class with some of our activities. So the objective of this...
You say the personal boundaries, but are you talking just physical? Or do you
No, we talk personal and emotional.
Okay.
We talk about who you're sharing your information with. How many of you have shared secrets with somebody? Can those secrets come back to bite you? Yes. So we talk about those emotional boundaries too. What are our emotional boundaries as well as physical boundaries? So we go through both. Because again, emotional intelligence is key. So does anybody have any questions on our relationships? That's kind of what we cover in our relationships. Yes?
How much of this is introduced to
The staff? Yes. We teach in middle schools, we teach in all the health classrooms. So all of the teachers are in the classrooms with us while we're doing that. My teachers, I can tell you, will email you and say, Deputy Martin is talking today about this topic. This is what he's talking about. If your kids come home talking about this, this is why they're talking about it. They want you to know.
But do your principals and counselors go through this training as well?
Yeah, they know that we're in there talking about it. We always try to let them know. They are aware of our curriculum. And any counselor, any teacher can go on and check out our stuff through our DFI site. All of our curriculum is online. We don't typically allow just anybody to get on there. We want somebody who has had a background check. So it's typically law enforcement, teachers, counselors. Those are the folks that we allow to come on and check out our curriculum. If you ever want to see what we're teaching, I can send you a PDF anytime. I'll send you that. You don't necessarily get to see the videos. But if you want to see those videos or you have questions about the videos, you can always come and talk to me. You always have the option, too, of opting out of our program if you don't want your child to be a part of it.
So right now, are these at our Douglas County Middle School?
Yes, it is. It's been at our schools since 2009. Every year we update the curriculum, and you're seeing the latest stuff that we have.
Is it at the charter schools too?
Yes, the charter schools, many of the charter schools are teaching it or have it. We have more of them because we've actually added more deputies over the years. Parker, Castle Rock, their officers teach it. Like we have 250 instructors in our state alone teaching it across the front range and throughout the state. Yes.
So how many times a year do you and your colleagues go into the?
There's 18 total lessons throughout 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. So we have 3 lessons in 6th grade. Okay. It's these 3 topics, 6 lessons in 7th, 6 lessons in 8th, and then back to 3 in high school. So they're getting a total of 18 lessons over the course of 4 years.
I see. Okay, and is this done through like their health?
Yeah, it's through health class in middle school. Okay. And then in elementary, it's just typically in the 6th grade, and typically we're doing the 9th grade in an auditorium style. It's more classroom based until we get to high school. The only one that's currently doing a classroom is that I know of is Ponderosa. They've actually made it to where they only have 30 to 40 kids. Otherwise, we're teaching typically about 150 to 300 kids at a time in an auditorium in high school.
Do you guys talk?
Sorry. Yes.
Is it required for the high school students to be in that?
Yes, and the high school ones, yeah, they try to make all freshmen. We are typically in their orientation. Those first, in most schools, it's the first few months of school in their freshman year. But like in some of them, like in Thunder Ridge, I'm not going to get there till one of the classes is in the first semester, but the other one's in the second half of the.
So is it only to freshman year, you don't do anything sophomore?
After that, we don't. It's manpower. We do have other classes. We have distracted driving. We have some that could go farther. But again, it's just a matter of us not having the manpower or again, we don't even have the curriculum built yet. It's been asked many times. We will like to get there at some point. But honestly, we want to get them early. The earlier we can get them, the better we're off we're going to be. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of our research. We have RMC Research has been researching us since 2011. They actually interview kids. They might interview you. They just randomly pick kids that are willing to be in the program. Again, we ask parents' permission. They might interview. Last year, they interviewed teachers. So we use that stuff to basically go back and figure out what's going on. It's not our sex ed. We don't really get into the sex piece of it. We talk about harassment, sexual harassment. We get into the consent. Any type of sexual curriculum, we leave onto the health teachers.
So the consent part, when you talk about no, are you just focusing mostly on giving like the physical
No.
consent and accepting the no and what the no means? That it's not necessarily, because I had this conversation, whether it was last year or the year before, with my son, and he was in 6th grade, and it was a dance, and he was like, I'm going to ask somebody to go, and I was like, you do understand she can say no, and the no doesn't mean that it's because she just doesn't like you.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, do you get a little bit more into that?
Yeah, we get into it, again, through all of our relationships, we get a lot of our stuff is not the physical. I can tell you that, because the physical, yes, it is a piece of it. But even when I talk about pornography, I tell them pornography is not about somebody in the nude. It is about abusive, controlling behavior. It is about emotional behavior. The biggest power in any of our emotions is that word love. When you're experiencing that, especially for the first time in your life, the emotion of love is going to be the biggest one that's going to tug at your heart. It's going to cause you maybe to do things that you would not normally do. So emotions is what we focus on. That is our primary focus. Good questions. Any more?
Sorry, slightly off topic. So my eldest is in grade 5, and she seems to be in a minority of not having a smartphone. And my husband.
We're going to get to that. We start in 6th grade, but we do have some of our digital stuff is K through 5. It's dqworld.net. Some of the tech teachers have adopted it within the district, not everybody so far, but it's not our specific program. It's actually one that was based out of Singapore. It's where they play gamified lessons. There's also NetSmarts just came out with something this year, first time, but it looks almost identical to DQ World stuff. I haven't went through it yet because I just found out about it literally last week. But I can tell you they're got a gamified system that's literally just like DQ World. They play a game, it tells them if they're susceptible to cyberbullying, maybe they're spending too much screen time. It depends on which part of the game they're playing. No, that is actually done right now through the tech teachers primarily. So when it comes to diving into digital culture, the whole digital culture, guys, is we are the parents that have to establish the bar. Currently, guys, we haven't established a bar as parents. Parents, we need to start establishing a bar. Where is that bar? Because we don't have our parents to turn to. That's really what a digital culture is about. How do you establish a digital culture in your home, and how does that translate into your school? How does it translate into your community? That's really what we're trying to get across to your kids, to you, to everybody. We all have to get on the same page. Because we got to think about it in this context. In 1921, the radio was the first thing that kind of influenced. In 1921, there was a fight between two individuals, but you had more people that had access to this fight through the radio than were actually at the event. First time ever. We see that now with the UFC. A lot of people buy this pay-per-view and are watching the fight. 1960, Kennedy-Nixon debate. Kennedy won. What device affected that? TV. Why? Much more photogenic, much better looking. Nixon was all sweaty. People that actually listened to it, though, thought Nixon won. Believe it or not. But 75% of Americans had a TV, so guess what? That was the first time we saw a device affect an election. 1983, who has a floppy disk now? Yeah, nobody. Could we get a lot of emails in 1983? Zero. We didn't have email. But those are the things, guys. It's changing pretty fast. The first smartphone, technically they say 2007, but it was actually 1992 was the first smartphone. It just wasn't called a smartphone by IBM. But Steve Jobs was credited with that. But in 2018, we saw the effect of the 2016 election. Guys, it is not some spoof. It's not something that's been made up. I actually work with Joe Toscano. He wrote this book over here called Automating Humanity. And he wrote it with the context, guys, that he used to work for Google. And what they're doing, he said, is unethical. Quite frankly, illegal. They're gaining our attention, they're stealing our data, and they're formulating our behaviors. Not just yours, your children too. Would anybody like to read this? Yeah, pass that back. So my thing is, guys, the point is technology has been affecting us for a long time. It's not just been overnight. The problem is we have www. It's much quicker pace now. Here is Sean, former Facebook with Zuckerberg, talking about
need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. It's a social validation feedback loop. It's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
It's unbelievable. Actually, the Silicon Valley executives, there's a school called the Waldorf School out in Silicon Valley, and they don't allow any technology in the school. It's all paper and pencil. And 75% of the students enrolled in that school are the sons and daughters of Silicon Valley tech execs. So they know a lot that we don't know. And that's a very good question. Unregulated, like any other product or service that we know is affecting people, what are we going to do about it?
This book, speaking right there, disconnected. Literally, we got kids growing up talking to devices instead of people. So what do they lack? Well, they lack emotional intelligence. Guys, they don't know how to have emotions. It's just crazy to watch. After our incident last year, guys, kids were typing into their phone, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, I'm sad. But do you think I saw one tear? Do you think I saw one kid really pissed off? No. Guys, they need to experience those emotions. Know what it's like to get angry and get over it. Know what it's like to be upset and get over it. We got to teach them that. Anybody want this one? So my thing is, guys, is these things all are, these books actually support, they're all psychology, doctors of psychology. They support a lot of what we're talking about within our curriculum. It's what's going on. When it comes to how they're influencing us, the tech companies use this. It's called the magic of maybe. Robert Spolansky, Stanford University, he actually created this whole magic of maybe, talked about it. What he talked about is If I reward you all 100% of the time, you're going to get this little dopamine hit, as you see right down here. But what do you think is going to happen if I can create a 50-50 chance? What do you think happens to your dopamine? Watch. It's a 400% increase. It's almost equivalent to that a hit of a dopamine, or excuse me, of cocaine. What that means is they're creating and making us addicted. How many of you in this room think you're addicted to your phone? Guys, we are. They create the addiction. They're doing it on purpose. They extend the delay. The companies, these tech companies, guys, regulate our feed. You don't get the like back right away. They hold it off a little bit to create the magic of maybe. The tech companies built it off this. Again, I know that from Joe's book. I know it because there's a new movie out right now on Netflix. How many of you have seen The Great Hack? Watch The Great Hack. Write that down. The Great Hack is actually, Joe worked with those people in that movie. Yes? Automating humanity. They're all on our site. You don't really need to write them down. I'll give you a link to our site here in just a little bit. But again, he talks about all that. They capture our data, addictive in nature, but ultimately, guys, they're formulating our behaviors. They're doing this on purpose. So how do they do it? How many of you have Siri or Alexa? How many of you believe that whatever you're talking about is popping up on your phone or popping up in your life? Guys, they're listening to us. It's not a myth. It is happening. They're using that information. If you have Fitbit, they are monitoring your steps. They're calculating where you go. All those things. They create behavioral residue. If we all Google the same thing right now, we're all going to get a different response because it's based off your clicks, your clicks, your clicks, your clicks, and my own. We're all going to get a different response. It's called behavioral residue. That's how they're formulating our behaviors. They use algorithms, they use artificial intelligence, and ultimately, guys, the system's going to adapt to you. They're going to create adjacent relationships. So you're going to start watching or seeing things that you never would have looked at it ever in your life because they created an adjacent relationship to what you were looking at previously. It is calculated. It is not a myth. So who owns your data? Not you. The only place that owns your data right now is in Europe. Europe actually passed GDPR. Basically, data regulation is all different now. In May of last year, they actually passed a law. They fought for it from 2011 to now. Are we going to have data regulation here eventually? Yes, eventually. It is going to happen. It's going to create a different job for us as law enforcement, for you as a citizen. You're going to have more rights for your data, for your child's data. But right now, guys, there is nothing regulating that. Nothing stopping us from getting your data. Here is a study that was actually in June of this year. It came out of the New York Times, but it talked about a college student who dropped out. They watched him for 5 years. He basically said he was falling down a rabbit hole. He dropped out of college, he started looking on YouTube, and he became a right wing. But the adjacent relationship was created and made him have a sense of belonging, and that adjacent relationship pulled him to the left wing. So now what do you think he thinks he is? Left wing. He doesn't know, he hasn't regulated his own behavior. He actually said at the end of this article that I've learned that you can't go to YouTube to get any type of education. But guys, guess where he's still going and still getting his information? YouTube. He hasn't deterred from that. Guys, these platforms, it's not just YouTube, it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's Snapchat. All these platforms are built the same way. So what the brain, guys, needs is a timeout. How many of you have heard your kids say, I'm bored? Guys, there's a lot of stuff in these books that talks about this. It's okay for your kid to be bored. You want them to be bored. You want to encourage them to be bored. Use creativity, use their mind to imagine instead of constantly being pulled down that slot machine. Guys, your brain needs the timeout. Kids' brains today are not getting a timeout. There's a reason why we're having all this discourse with them. It causes the harm. Poor concentration, less adequate, but you're going to see here in a little bit, suicide rates are going up. Lack of sleep time. Everything is correlated to the device. But bots and trolls also do this. This is from the Parkland shooting. This will show you how bots and trolls pretty much controlled what was going on.
Within 24 hours of the tragedy, nonpartisan researchers tracking Russian-linked Twitter accounts registered a sharp uptick in trending hashtags and topics related to the Florida shooting. Arguments ensue and disinformation spread, all because of bots and trolls. Bots are automated social media accounts. They work like a plane on autopilot, but their human operators create the settings. Trolls are real people, commenting and sharing posts that align with their personal agenda. When an event happens, like the Parkland shooting, trolls will use controversial hashtags to insert themselves into the trending conversations. At the same time, bots are programmed to target the trolls' hashtags to amplify the message. The bot hijacks the message behind the hashtags, plastering it to the news feeds of millions of users. That's how social media manipulation works.
So that's how they are formulating our behaviors. They attach to different things. They're using trolls and bots, and they're doing this, guys, and they're doing it very calculated. And you might think it sounds weird, but guys, think about your own behaviors sometimes. What are we getting manipulated into watching and doing sometimes? Not just your kids. Guys, the kid's mind is not prepared to deal with this. There's something that I like to bring up is before you ever give your kid a phone, that you need to make sure they have TAR. Tolerance, acceptance, and resiliency. They got to have those qualities. Because guys, the trouble with these things on the internet, guys, you never know if they're genuine. Abraham Lincoln, right? Stanford University actually did a study a few years ago. Put kids through 56 different tasks and all demographics, middle school, high school, and college students. Most kids, only 80% could not even get it right. 20% were able to tell if that picture or that video was real. Only 20% were able to tell you if that article was real. 80% got it wrong. College students were the worst. CRAP test, that's something we use in our school district. I can tell you the health teachers have it right in there. It's by Molly Beestrom. Is it credible, reliable, who's the authority, and what's the purpose? Most stuff does not pass the CRAP test because it's not credible, it's not reliable. The authority behind it has a purpose and is trying to get you to believe into something, whatever that is. Guys, we're all buying into this, and it's creating a lot of discourse. Harvard Business Journal last year put out that false news travels faster, farther, and deeper. How many of you believe that? Guys, it does. Sensationalism. It's not about being right today, it's about who can be first. Many of our old-time reporters talk about this. The young guys are getting, and gals are getting onto the elevator, and they're all doing this instead of communicating and talking about the real news. They're all worried about, I want to be first, whether it's right or wrong. They don't care. The other thing is, again, that perspective. Here is a perfect example, body cam footage. I want you to tell me what you see in this body cam footage and what you think this officer... Really quick, what do you think? Was that officer very threatened? Moderately or not? How many think very? How many think moderate? How many think he was not threatened at all? How many have no idea what you just watched? Okay? My thing is, guys, this was actually a study. Was this officer justified in force? How many of you think he was? How many of you think he wasn't? Again, how many of you think you have no idea? Guys, that's where the problems lie. Most people in the study thought he was very threatened when they watched that video. Most of them thought perfectly justified. What we see, what we hear, what we read, guys, becomes our reality. That's it. But here's the real perspective. This is what really happened in this video and this body cam footage. Pretty crazy, right? So that's the whole thing, guys. We get what we look for. Look around the room really quick. Look for everything that's green. Now close your eyes and tell me everything you just saw that was red. Guys, I created the perception. That's what we're doing online. People are creating the perception for us. It becomes our reality, and that's where the problems lie. It's where the problems lie with your children. They're believing everything. Adults are believing everything. That becomes our reality. And it's kind of sad that that happens because some of the reality, guys, they're trying to live to perfection. Can we truly be perfect? Well, here's a perfect example, guys. We can't be perfect because it's not possible. Watch her get modified through Photoshop. Watch her neck. Watch her eyes. Watch her lips. So then it's plastered all over a billboard or on Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or some other platform, and that becomes some kid's perception of perfection. And they can't live to perfection. This is why they need TAR. Because if you don't have tolerance, acceptance, and resiliency, you can't deal with that. Guys, kids can't live to this perfection. We got to teach them not to try to live to this perfection. It's okay not to be perfect. We got to teach them that. Because they all have this. How many of you think your kid has FOMO? How many of you think you have FOMO, that fear of missing out? There's a reason why you're here. You had the fear of missing out on the Parent Academy. My thing is, guys, is that's it. We have this fear as human beings that we're not a part of what's going on Instagram or Snapchat or what's going on in my neighborhood. Why wasn't I invited to the neighborhood party? All that kind of stuff is going on not just in your child's life, it's happening in adults' lives as well. We have this fear, and we also have this fear of not being a part of being famous. Kids feel famous if they get a lot of likes, they get a lot of follows, they feel famous. I tell kids, though, you need to be worried about your face, your address, your memoirs, but most of all, your emotions. Because where they're going to attack you guys, first off, yes, they want your pictures. Sometimes not appropriate pictures. They want your address or your phone number. How many of you have seen addresses and phone numbers posted? Now I know where you live. That's where we get into the predator talk. The memoirs. Your memoirs are typically your child online talking about something emotional. I just won a football game. That's an emotion they're talking about. I just broke up with my boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other. That's an emotion. Somebody's going to take that emotion and run with it and manipulate you. And that's what we get into the conversation about, how your emotions get messed with when you're online. Again, why we have to have TAR if we're going to be online. Tolerance. We will not like everyone. We teach kids and want kids to understand we're all different. We're all different and weird. And it's okay to be different and weird. Understand that you're going to have differences with people. You're not going to like everybody, but you have to understand that. When it comes to accepting, what I get into is you got to be accepting. Every time you hit send, you got to accept whatever response you get back. Good, bad, or indifferent. You got to be able to accept when you hit send that you might not get the response you thought you were going to get back. You got to accept that. And lastly, being resilient. You're going to be okay no matter what. No matter what response you get back, you're okay. Learn from these mistakes, failures, and downfalls. Allow a child to fail. How many of you had a child go through elementary, some sport or something, and they got a trophy for every time they just participated? Was that okay? No. Guys, in middle school, they have an A, B, and C, D, E, F team if they want to, because some parents are going to complain because my child didn't get a play. But honestly, guys, if your kid didn't make the A or maybe the B team, you get cut. Because guess what? That's how they're going to learn. You got to learn. We learn more from failing than we do ever from what we succeeded at. We have to let kids fail. We have to get them to understand it's okay to fail. It's okay to understand what it means to do that. I talk about Michael Jordan, best basketball player to ever play the game, got kicked off his sophomore year in high school. Did he play resiliency? Yeah. He came back to be the best basketball player to ever play the game. Yes, it was not LeBron. It's Michael Jordan. Okay? My whole thing is, guys, is you got to understand that. Yeah, I know, I aged myself really quick. But I saw Michael Jordan play live 3 times, guys, and I can tell you there's nobody like that guy. So my thing, we're born with ingredients. We get into this. This comes from the book Value Up. It was actually Mike Donahue. He actually lives down in Monument. He wrote this book. He goes around and speaks. Encourage him to come to your school to speak. Get your administrators or come up with the funds for him. He charges a couple $1,000 here locally, or maybe he'll do it if you are real sweet to him. But the thing is, guys, he's got a great book. One of my teachers actually is buying all 150 for his students because he wants them to do a book study on this. He actually built it for kids. You actually can get a free one. This is the only one that's not on my site, so you want to write this one down. Go to value-up.org. Guys, he'll give you a free PDF of it. Value-up.org, right on his site. So, anybody over here? The whole thing with this, guys, ingredients. what he gets into here, guys, we're all born with ingredients. Sometimes we're athletic, sometimes we're wealthy, maybe we're good looking, but maybe somewhere along the lines we have our ingredients change. We got to create something, do something, and be something with those. Maybe you get divorced, and now you've created a different ingredient in your child's life. We talk about how were you with that? Were you tolerant, accepting, and resilient, and saying, yeah, mom's over here now, dad lives over here, I'm okay with that? Or did you play that poor woe is me card? I bring up my own brother in this situation. My brother, unfortunately, has been in a wheelchair. I think he's his entire life. I think he's been dealt some bad ingredients. The main reason he's in the wheelchair, muscular dystrophy. But I think he was dealt a bad card, bad ingredients. But you would not know that if you talked to my brother, because he'll never tell you that. 4 years ago, my brother went into a coma. As a family, guys, we had to make the most horrible decision after about a week into that. We had to decide to pull the plug or to see what was going to happen. And as a family, we said, you know, his quality of life is just not going to be the same. He's been in this coma for so long time, the doctor said there's nothing else can do, so we decided to pull the plug. Guys, my brother woke up the next morning, said, where are my glasses? Where's my ham and egg and cheese sandwich? And why are you guys crying? It's like, dude, you've been in a coma all week. We thought you were dead. So he hopped on Facebook and goes, hey, just so you know, my family thought I was dead. They pulled the plug on me, but guess what? I'm still here. Guys, my brother creates something, does something, and he is something, because you would not know that my brother, for the last 4 years, has lived in an old folks home at 40-something years old, because he would never tell you that. You would not know that he's been in a wheelchair all of his life, because he won't tell you that. That's what it means to be resilient. That's the message I try to send to your children. Guys, they need to understand that. You can be resilient no matter what you're dealt with. Because, guys, here's what we've seen. 2012, there's been a huge increase in depression, anxiety, suicide, lack of sleep. What happened in 2012? What? Newtown? No. It's actually devices. Over 50% of Americans in 2012 had a device. Social media was going through the roof, but guess what's still happening? According to Common Sense Media in 2018, now 90% of kids have a device, a smartphone. So guess what's happening to depression, anxiety, suicide? Still climbing, still going through the roof. Guys, Jean Twenge wrote that book. She's been studying generations for a while. With these generations, she's said there's nothing else you can correlate this to other than social media, other than devices in the problem. And we already have a winner. The thing is, guys, is it's a proven fact that's what's going on. We're seeing it. How many of you have seen this at the restaurant? I saw a few of you doing it in here. The thing is, guys, is that's the direct effect. But again, as I mentioned, kids are drowning their emotions into their phone. They're not experiencing the emotion. How many of you have typed LOL into a phone? Were you laughing out loud? Probably not. Guys, when we laugh out loud, we're crying because we're laughing so hard is when you're face-to-face with somebody. That's what emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is your ability to perceive, use, manage, and understand your emotions. The only way this can be achieved, guys, is more face-to-face time. We got to teach balance and moderation. I'm not by any means telling any parent in here to take away your kid's device forever, or that's the answer. What I am telling you, you need balance and moderation. There are times when you do take it away, because it's family time. We're at the dinner table. We're at the restaurant. There are times when you need to pull it and say, this is where we're going to communicate face-to-face. I did it just with my son yesterday. He was in the car. I said, earbuds are out. This is the time we're going to conversate. You're taking off for college. I want to know what you have done, and if you have everything ready to go before we leave. I don't want to have to be yelling at you because you have your earbuds in the back of the car. I had a captive audience. He wasn't going anywhere unless he was jumping out of the car at 75 miles an hour. My thing is, guys, that's what we got to do. The power of the phone, guys. If I take my phone out right now, what did I just do to everybody's value in this room? Yeah, including my own. What if I put it up like this? Does this help my value? I put you between and take maybe a few pictures and videos? No. How about if I just set it down? Does that give you guys some value? Or maybe if I turn it upside down, does that help give you some value? No, guys, it doesn't give us value. What we got to teach is turn it off completely, put it away, and it's gone. Because how many of you have had that phantom buzz, even when it's not in your pocket? Guys, we've rewired our brains. It actually does happen. I get them all the time. That's what's going on with this stuff. When it comes to value, again, this is all from Mike Donahue's book. We got to teach kids they have value. Even if they're down the path of drugs, guys, they still have value. They need to look in the mirror and see a 10. They need to pay attention to their 5 closest friends. When I talk about friends, guys, I use a quote. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. As a parent, you need to know who your child is friends with, online or in person. The 5 closest friends, 5 closest people. Could even be you. You might be one of those 5 closest people. Maybe it's not you because, again, you're having that argument. But the problem is, guys, the overrated value is right here, these faceless people online. We got to tell them to stop agreeing with the them, these faceless people online. They need to start looking at the 5 closest people, but more importantly, looking in the mirror and seeing a 10. Because, guys, they don't see a 10. This is what they see. This video will show you kids talking about themselves, but then they're going to turn around, you're going to hear what the classmates actually really thought of them.
Hello. Dumb, ugly, and awkward or something like that.
Depressing, a bit lonely, and not the best looking.
We asked a few of your classmates about you.
Okay.
Oh boy.
He's very considerate. He's compassionate for other people.
She's extremely talented.
She's really good at making people feel better. Gentle, and she has an amazing personality.
And she's such a sweet, kind person. And he's really good at sharing ideas.
One to quickly make jokes, and it does lighten up a day.
She's just so kind.
I think we need more people like her who are excited and out there and willing to put themselves on the line. People are so nice.
This is a bit of life-changing.
That was really eye-opening and kind. Thank you.
Guys, every kid's thinking that because, again, they're comparing themselves to perfection online. I always tell kids, when it comes to the word ugly, is everybody going to find you attractive in life? No. Use that to your advantage. When somebody tells you you're ugly, you say, you know what, that's your problem. You just don't find me attractive. I know I'm a very attractive person. You just put it back on them. That's your problem, not my problem. But you got to get kids to believe that. Believe that they're a 10. We got to teach that in our homes. We got to teach that at schools. We got to teach that in our communities. Kids have value. Even if they're down the path of drugs, guys, I even talk about that as well. Because, guys, when it comes to online, the risky behavior they're doing, guys, we wouldn't do it in person. How many of you currently are on social media? Okay, so do you mind if I follow you the rest of today? Sounds kind of creepy in person, right? Yet we're doing that online. We're following people, we're viewing people. Oh, do you mind if I view you today? Guys, here's Jenna Kingsley showing you how creepy it looks on the streets of New York.
Social networking is completely out of control these days. Because the things we do online make sense in real life. Let's go to the streets and find out. Ma'am, hi. I just want to let you know that I'm following you. Like, just giving you an alert. Enjoy it. Jenna Kingsley is now following you. Just like do whatever and I'll just watch. Is that creepy? You want to post me back? I know, but that's what you do, right? Hi guys. I was wondering if you would like accept my friendship. That's really important with like the whole button down. Do you want to be connected? I just want to let you know that 12 people have viewed you. 12 people have viewed you in some way. I don't know, you must be really important. They're like, viewing you. That guy just remain anonymous. I have just checked into Grand Central Station. What's your name? Jenna and Andrew have just now we're all connected.
So it's pretty silly, but honestly, guys, it's pretty creepy behavior. We're allowing our kids to do this. We're doing this in a lot of cases. When we're on social media, we're allowing perfect strangers to follow us. You might not know they're following you. We have these platforms. Again, formulating our behaviors. Some of the crimes we get into talking about, obviously, Social Security. All I need is your name and your Social Security number, guys, and I can steal your identity. There was actually on the news a couple years ago about a guy that he went to go apply for a student loan, and he wasn't able to buy or get his student loan because he apparently bought a houseboat when he was 10 years old. Guys, it took him almost 6 years in the courts to fight that, to prove he didn't buy a houseboat. This is why this crime is so devastating. Guys, you need to check your child's credit history. Go on and check that out. Make sure that somebody hasn't stole their identity already. They target kids for that reason, because kids don't check their credit history because they have no idea what you're talking about. Cyberbullying, as I mentioned earlier, Kiana's Law. In some other states, guys, parents get fined. In New York, a few city ordinances actually have where the parents go to jail. How many of you would like to go to jail for your child? It's actually 15 days in jail if you get caught second or third time in New York. This gal here, she got charged with manslaughter. She's currently serving, she only got 18 months, but she cyberbullied her boyfriend into committing suicide. She's fighting that and trying to get out of it, but by the time she's done fighting it, her 18 months will be done and she'll be out anyway. But more importantly, what we talk again about is, what does this say about you as a person if you're doing this type of activity? What is the problem? Sometimes it's finding the deeper root. Maybe there's something going on in this child's life. Did they get some bad ingredients dealt their way, and is that why they're doing that? These are all questions that I know the counselors all address with them. And we talk about when it comes, again, to pornography. It's as addicting as heroin, according to Harvard University. The image kills love. Viewing these, again, abusive behaviors become normalized. The reason why kids are sexting, guys, kids can get on this and simply type in the wrong letter on a Google search, and the next thing you know, these sites are made to pop up. Kids are curious. They start watching it. It becomes addictive, guys. This is not soft-core porn. This is hardcore abusive behavior porn. This is why kids have a big problem when it comes to relationships. See how we tied back into relationships already? This is where it's happening. This is where they're developing it. This is why sexting is not a big deal. If they've been watching a bunch of nude videos since they were 5 years old, because heaven forbid you gave them a phone at 5 years old, a smartphone that has access to the www, the World Wide Web, your child could potentially be viewing that. So sending and receiving a nude photo, is that a big deal to them? No. That's why sexting becomes not a big deal. But I always say and ask kids, who are you really sexting with? So with that whole sexting business, can that picture pop up in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s? My point with this, you don't know. Was it grandma? We get into that discussion, and the kids go, ugh, I just sent it to grandma. But we also talk about, again, popping up in your 20s, 30s. We had a gal up in Jefferson County. Back when she's 16, she was sexting. Well, lo and behold, she's now a doctor. She called us up and said, you remember that picture and you guys busted me for? Yeah. Well, it's been sent to all my clients. Guys, this is what kids, we need to tell them and let them know. This will pop up in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, the rest of your life potentially. What are you going to do when it pops up? It's not just to your boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever you just sent that to. It's permanent. We talk again about that trust and secrecy. Again, we saw that in relationships, but again, we talk about it, creating the similarities. Again, it's not just the creepy old guy predator we also talk about fellow teens doing this to fellow teens. Again, having that disagreement. We already said we have disagreements. They use that as a target, saying, oh yeah, I go through that same thing with my parents. My parents do that to me too. Guess what? Your kid feels connected now because they're going through the same problem that your child's going through, having that problem with their parent. The creepy old people use that. They isolate your child. If your kid is locking themselves because you allow them to have all their devices in their bedroom, guess what? Who are they talking to while they're in there? Show me your friends. I'll show you your future. Do you know who they're talking to? Who are their friends online? They're going to isolate your child and try to become the BFF. Isolate them from real world friends. Ultimately, it's about getting the secrets because that's what they use to manipulate. That is predatory behavior. It's very dangerous, but it's also something the kids need to be aware of, but you also need to be aware of it as a parent. Boys often think they can't be a part of this. Here it is. Actual site. I always tell parents and I tell kids the same thing. These sites don't matter, guys. The name of the site all change. One will go away, a new one's going to pop up. They're in a chat room. They're on a link to their video camera. And here he is being played emotionally, telling how cute he is, but he's being asked to shut up and just twerk. You're a hottie. So there he is shaking his butt on screen. Then he's being told to show off his abs. Then he's being told to drop his pants. And then the next thing you know, you have somebody sexting. But more importantly, he's being manipulated and maybe being trafficked at that point because he doesn't want that getting out to any other kid in school. Boys can be trafficked just like girls. It is forced labor, prostitution. You're not always taken from your home. Where kids are being met initially typically is through media, social media, but they are at malls. We just had one report of at our King Supers. School events, all that kind of stuff, guys, is where these traffickers go. It is happening here in Colorado. They use the Romeo effect, become the boyfriend and girlfriend. We had a group of girls at one of our high schools a few years ago. 2 of them started dating 2 guys out of Aurora, happened to be 2 gang members. They got them to be escorts, but then they also got them to go back to the school and recruit other girls. When we arrested these 2 boys, they had 8 girls at the high school working for them. Right here in Douglas County. It does happen here. Guys, it's not something that doesn't happen. It's reported less than 1% because these kids think they're prostitutes. These kids, we try to tell them, you're not a prostitute. Who we're after is the person that put you in that predicament. We go through a major bust. We had 10 boys that we rescued a couple years ago and 7 girls. They use family members, gang members, again, as I mentioned, but again, the myth is you're always taken. Those girls weren't taken from the home. What happened is the parents were going, how's my daughter getting all this nice stuff? Yeah, they were getting some of the money, but again, those 2 guys they were the pimps. So, as I mentioned, Tom Kirsting talks about the biggest question we always get from parents, when should I give my child a phone? That was actually mentioned, I believe, in the back. He says, Tom Kirsting from that Disconnected book says, when you're comfortable with them watching pornography. I always say the caveat to that is if you don't have some type of parental control. Wait till 8th. That was another one. You mentioned, again, giving your child a phone. This is one of them that you can do. Get 10 of your parents in your school that don't want to give a child a phone until 8th grade. It was started by a group of moms started this, wait till 8th. So go to their site, they'll show you how to do that, talk to you how to do that. 5 and 2, 5 days on, 2 days off. That was created out of the UK. Put alarm clocks back into the bedroom. Get devices out of the bedroom. That means TVs, gaming systems, everything's out of the bedroom. There's a reason why kids aren't getting sleep. There's a reason why they're having a lot of problems at night and problems in school the next day because they've been up all night when mom and dad told them to go to bed. So it's a detox time. Give them a real camera with real film. See how many selfies they take. Okay? All those were part of it. Considerations you have to consider as a parent, the restrictions you desire, the budget. Some of these do cost money. I'm going to show you some of those here in a second. Child's age, time willing to devote to this. It does take time on your part to monitor your child. It's different for an elementary student to a middle school to a high school. What you do as parenting. I'm not here to tell anybody how to parent. Every child's different. I can tell you I have kids too, and every one of them is different. My oldest was my knucklehead. Establish those digital rules. Be a role model. How many of you think we need to be better role models as parents? Put your finger right here. How many of you think we need to be smarter? Put your finger right here. How many think we need to have a better sense about us? Put your finger right here. How many think kids need to stand prouder? Put your finger right here on your chin. On your chin. On your chin. Guys, that's role modeling. We can't just say it, guys. We got to do it. We got to do the right thing. We got to start role modeling better. I can tell you I'm guilty of it. There's times where I have to learn to put my devices down and go out and play lacrosse with my kid. Guys, those times that you need to, whoops, sorry, some of you were thinking that. Monitor them, turn off the notifications, actually put it in airplane mode where you can't get notifications. Guys, we're allowing these devices to keep beeping at us and give us another notification when you sign up for this platform. Oh, notify me, notify me, notify me. Now your phone's just going off constantly, guys, and you're in a constant state of anxiety and depression. Turn it off. Put it in airplane mode. Yes, that turns everything off, but guys, at least you're not constantly tuned into that phone. Do what you intended for and get off. How many of you got onto YouTube and then it was 2 videos and 3 videos and 4 videos and 5 videos? And guys, that's that adjacent relationship. They're addicting us to it. Again, get the devices out, put the earbuds out in the vehicle, and again, you have a captive audience. Have that discussion. Here's Scott Frost. Again, if there's anything negative about women, anything racial or sexual, anything about guns, we're not going to recruit you, period. Basically saying social media is your resume to the world. It's not just Scott Frost, guys. Companies are saying this. We teach kids this. We teach kids to be positive on social media. What it means to have a business. Because every time you hit send, guess what? You're sending out a message about your business, and that business, guys, is all about you. What did you just say about yourself? What are you telling the world about you? That's the message we try to send with social media. Again, the simple way to get rid of addiction, according to this psychologist, Mr. Peterson, he says, guys, you find something better. We got to teach kids to find better things other than playing on our phone, other than seeing what's the latest thing on Instagram and Snapchat. We control the attention, guys. We honestly do. But we got to teach kids to control that attention. We got to teach ourselves to control the attention we're giving to them as well. The challenge, again, is to find what is better. So on our site, if you go to dfinow.org, dfinow.org, we have a parenting tab. On our parenting tab, you'll scroll down to that. There's downloads. Parental controls are on there. We have an app sheet. We literally update that about every 6 months, what the app was meant for, what kids are using it for, what parents need to know. So that's what you're going to see. You'll see the controls, what controls are on there, what they cost. You're going to see the hidden apps, where kids are hiding things. The calculator app, those types of things, where kids can hide videos, pictures. If they have more than one calculator, maybe more than one music app, there's a chance they're hiding something behind there. That stuff's all on our site, on that download. Also on there is, what does this app do? Again, what the parent needs to know, and what's the real age limit for that. There's a reason why there's age limits. Don't allow your child to get on those, guys. There's a big push to wait till they're at least 13. If you have a newborn, don't let them see any device for the first 2 years. Sounds crazy, but guys, there's people, you see it in the stores all the time, have their baby with a little device. Guys, it's a blue screen. It stimulates their mind, causes a lot of the problems. Here's an easier way to download all that stuff. Just go to text DFI now, type 22828, and if you do that, guys, you're going to get all those downloads sent to you. You literally just click on them, and it'll send them to you. Quick and easy method. I'll let you guys snap that real quick. We good? And I apologize, I wasn't expecting George to be here. I'm running behind, and I still have to get to substance use. The other one is the read. Again, all these books that I've been handing out, guys, they're all right there. The Boogeyman, Automating Humanity, you can literally click on there. We have an Amazon link where you can get to those. So things like this, Selfie. This one actually I consider the best book for parents. It actually has tips in the back, and I got you in the way back. It's The Boogeyman exists. This is actually the best one that I was mentioning. And The Class of Parenting is also very good. You might get offended by it because he's very straightforward with parents that we aren't doing a great job. Other resources, Social Smart, Common Sense Media, NetSmarts. There's DQ World. Again, that's our elementary. And this one's actually a one for parents that I encourage you to go to. Is built out of Washington State. Another great one. So I'll let you take a snap of that one. Is anybody going to be sour with me going over just a little bit? If you have to leave, I understand. I know we all have lives. But again, I apologize. I wasn't expecting George to get here. Anybody have any questions about digital before I move on to substance use? Yes. Sorry, I'll get to you. Yeah, that's why the wait till 8th is probably the best thing I can suggest. Yes, actually I have a specific digital parent academy that's going to take an entire hour and a half for just digital. I'm going to be doing that at Stone Mountain in November, November 14th at 3:45. We do those periodically. This one's kind of an overview that we do here every month, but we do more specific ones. I have a specific one just for digital or a specific one just for substance use. They're both about an hour and a half. We do those periodically at different schools.
What apps do you find kids using for texting? Snapchat, TikTok?
All of them. Literally. I mean, the names just changed. You'll find it in TikTok. TikTok is, I can tell you nationwide, TikTok is a big problem one right now. Snapchat is a big one right here in Douglas County. Instagram, big problem right here. But they also have other ones that they're using that, again, we might not even know. A lot of times, guys, I find out in the classroom. Kids will tell you. They might not necessarily tell you, but they're going to tell somebody somewhere, and that's how we find out. Another one that's big for cyberbullying last year. I don't know if it's still this year because it just started, but Discord was a bad one for kids that were cyberbullying because you can be anonymous. Yes?
So going back to the trolls and bots a while ago.
Yes.
So who or what is benefiting from, you know, kind of manipulating its choices or behaviors?
These platforms do. Ultimately, the platforms do because they're formulating our behaviors. They alter our behaviors. The election was not by accident. They went out and tested different things. One of the things they actually tested, believe it or not, was Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. If you want, no, the most recent, Trump. But I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm saying they went out and tested. They went to other elections throughout the world. They tested other elections throughout the world before they went into ours. They did it through Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. They actually went out, and the people forming these rallies, guys, believe it or not, some of them were the Russians formulating these rallies. It was not the actual groups. All this stuff, guys, is within Joe's book. It's also mentioned again in The Great Hack. It's not some conspiracy theory. It's not something that's not happening. It is happening. They're doing this on purpose because it ultimately turns, guys, Facebook's not free. Who's the product? We are. They get advertisements. There's another video. I just didn't play it today because, again, because of time. But literally, they formulate our behaviors, and it turns into revenue for them because they put the advertisement, and then you end up buying that thing. Guess what? Facebook gets a residual from it. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, so all this material that you are providing for us is the kids are getting it too?
Yes.
Just like a parent presentation?
No, the parent present, everything that you've seen here, guys, is somewhere in our curriculum. Some of it might have been in our high school, some of it might have been in our middle, some of it might have been in our elementary. I kind of gave you a flavor of everything that we cover.
How do you talk to kids about, they seem to believe that things disappear on
Yeah,
like Snapchat.
I actually have them, here's how I do it. I actually have them draw a phone in ink or marker at the start of class. At the end of class, after we've talked about all these things, I have them try to erase that phone. Can they erase it? No. The point, once you hit send, it is out there forever. You will not be able to erase it. That's one of the ways we get it across. We have different activities we do. With one of them for cyberbullying, I actually have them play Jenga. They actually have to walk up and say something mean to Jenga. They can't use profanity, but they have to come up and say, you're stupid, and take out a block. Guess how hard it is for a kid just to say, I'm stupid to a block? Extremely difficult, but I say, we get into that conversation now. Why was it so hard for you to say it to a block in front of the class, but it's so easy for you online? How do you keep this from happening? How do you fix Jenga? There's only one way you fix it. How do you fix it? You don't do it in the first place. They eventually get to that, but I can tell you they have trouble. Oh, you build it up. You do this. You do that. No. Eventually somebody will say it. You don't do it in the first place. And that's kind of what our message is there. Sake of time, I'm going to try and hustle through this one as fast as I can with the substance use guys. We talk about clearing the cloud of substance use. What we focus on, guys, is the industries. The industries are targeting your children, and they're winning. How do they do it? They do it through your emotions. Again, we're back to emotional intelligence. They want your child to fit in, feel good, or forget their feelings. Kids want to fit in. Again, that first video I showed you that. Feeling good, human nature, we all want to feel good. Drugs, I can make everybody feel good. Actually, in class, I get the kids up and exercising. They start to feel good. Or I said, I can pass around a marijuana edible in about an hour or so, it's going to kick in. And guess what? You're going to think you feel good because I just tricked your reward pathway in your brain. That's why drugs work. Forgetting your feelings. Again, Anybody been stressed, have anxiety before? Yeah, we've all had that. Do you like feeling that way? No. Well, what can you do? You can take drugs to forget your feelings. Or we can do other things. We talk about what other things do you like to do to forget your feelings? And the kids will come up with all kinds of things that they like to do that don't involve drugs that helps them forget their feelings. Writing stuff down, journaling, talking to a friend, talking to a counselor, whatever that is. So we get into all those discussions. Again, we talk about the marketing. Here's the old ads, the new ads for very similar, aren't they? The tobacco industry guys, e-cigarettes. They're e-cigarettes. They are a smoking device. We've seen it finally all over. I mean, just this last week, it was all over in Minnesota, California. We got upper respiratory problems going on. My nephew is a doctor down in Memphis. He said popcorn lung is through the roof because of vaping. We saw popcorn lung with tobacco. Tobacco industry guys was going in the toilet because everybody knows they got sued, multi-billion-dollar lawsuit, and the truth had to come out. The truth ads started coming out. You saw Terry with the stoma. She's one of our videos, and the kids are frightened by that. Guys, they don't care about the consequences. They do care about their appearance, and they care about looking stupid. The industries are making them look stupid. This is part of the reason why it's part of our curriculum. They're making kids look very dumb, and they're very good at it. The vape pens can explode. We had 2 known deaths this last year, but again, they can explode here. There was a girl just a couple weeks ago. She blew basically her bottom part of her jaw off because one of them exploded. Again, the upper respiratory, again, we have kids that are guinea pigs today for the vape industry, for the marijuana industry, and they're very good at targeting our kids because they don't have anything regulating them from that. San Francisco actually has the first place. Again, that's where Juul is. Juul is the #1 device out for vaping, but they don't allow devices to be sold there now. Boulder's actually looking at that right now, believe it or not, Boulder of all places. Marijuana industry has been very successful. Again, they're targeting people. Here was Cookie Monster. He was on the side of a marijuana store. Who was he targeting? Kids, obviously. So much so, Sesame Street actually sued them. How low is your moral compass when you're being sued by Sesame Street? They've done a very good job, guys, of claiming this, claiming that it's a plant, claiming it, guys. I don't call it marijuana anymore because today's marijuana is no longer marijuana. It is not a plant. The stuff that is actually their moneymaker is a different product. CBD is a different product. It is the medical piece. It is the non-psychotic piece of the plant. Don't necessarily have a problem with that piece of the plant because it does work for some medical purposes. But again, it's CBD. It's an extract. THC, this high-potency THC is an extract. It is no longer a plant. They're targeting kids. Here, this was actually in Ohio. Oops. Get back to that. Ohio. They actually had it, tricks boxes. It got basically busted there. Had high-potency THC in it. Does that look like a plant in there? No, it's pure THC. It can be as high as 98% THC. This stuff actually tested somewhere, I think, around 80%. They say they keep targeting kids, and it keeps coming up on the news, and it makes me mad. They said youth rate hasn't increased. Well, I actually did ours just for Douglas County, guys, and in 2017, when I did our stats that we had for just the kids we arrested, it went up 133%. That's just the kids we arrested. So do you think it's probably 2 or 3 times that? Because we don't catch every kid. Juul, that's the Juul. Guys, this is the one. It's 74% of the industry. It's $15 billion. That's their valuation this last year. That's the #1 targeting kids. It's easy to hide. It doesn't emit all that vape. It's very small. They actually can hide it in their sleeve, in their, right in the top of their shirt, whatever, and they're vaping right in school. But yet they don't target kids. That's what they tell you. Guys, they've done it, and they've done a great job at targeting kids. They created all kinds of flavorings. There's a reason why the FDA said, Juul, get rid of the flavorings, because you're targeting kids. There's a reason why San Francisco closed San Francisco down for selling devices, because they're targeting kids. They said, A, we don't know the long-term effects, and you're targeting our children in San Francisco, so we're not going to let you do that anymore. They said, FDA, you need to figure it out. So that's really what it came down to. Marijuana, guys, these are some of the legalized states. Obviously, we're on there. But again, it's illegal under federal law. We talk about that, the delusion that marijuana makes money. Guys, we've lost more money in law enforcement, court litigation, and medical care. Those costs have went through the roof. Yes, we made about $331 million in the first 3 years, but we lost over $331 million in those 3 areas, period. The black market was supposed to go away, guys. There was just here not too long ago, we had over 240 homes we busted throughout the state of Colorado. That marijuana was not being sold in the state of Colorado. If Trump wants to build a wall, maybe he needs to consider our state in that wall. Because, guys, we have 34 states that have had our marijuana from the state of Colorado in their state where it's not legal. 34 states that we know of busts. So it's marijuana is related to psychosis. We'll get into that. But here's the old ditchweed, guys. The ditchweed, guys, was about 7% THC. That's the highest you've ever seen. What we're seeing today, we split this plant, and there's 7%. This is what we're seeing. It's actually a genetically modified plant now. The stuff that you're seeing, it's grown in a warehouse by chemists. It's 5 times stronger. But again, this isn't their moneymaker. This should be legalized one way, and these two should be legalized different ways. This should be its own way, and this should be its own way. THC can be as high as 98% again. It's a pure extract. The CBD is the extract, again, for the seizures, whatever. But again, not a problem with this. This is where the problem is, guys. That's what they're putting in vape pens. Because, guys, does any of this look like a plant anymore? This is what goes into the edibles. This is what goes into your child. This is called shatter. It's called shatter because it's like glass. You break off a little piece, you put it on a heating coil of a vape pen, it melts down, and you can vape it. You can't smell it because it doesn't smell any different. It's not like the old pot. You can't really smell it when it's vaped. Problems with this. The edibles, it takes an hour or two for it to kick in. So your kid eats one of those edibles, doesn't feel the effect. What do you think they're going to do? Keep eating it until an hour or two later it's going to kick in, and that's where the marijuana psychosis comes in. It blocks those inhibitors. This is, again, it's called cannabinoid because you have cannabinoid receptors. These receptors, great, but look what THC does. It blocks the receptors. It's why you don't feel pain. It's why you're not as smart. It's why you start having all these other issues. So the psychosis, here's that video. This is a guy in downtown Denver. Watch him. I cut off the audio because he's actually dropping too many F words, but he's screaming that he thinks he's going to die. He doesn't recognize his best friend or the paramedics trying to help him. He just took 2 dabs, which is pure THC, off of a bong that you actually have to use a blowtorch to melt it down because it's like sticky glue. But 2 dabs, and he's lost his mind. That's part of marijuana psychosis. The other part of marijuana psychosis, here's a gentleman. Look, 89.7 THC level in one of these. So he ate one, but one wasn't enough because he didn't feel the effects.
But 23-year-old Luke Goodman's charmed life ended last Saturday after he ingested marijuana out of
Sorry, I wasn't expecting George.
He was in Keystone with his cousin Caleb Fowler on a family snowboard vacation from their homes in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The two spent $78 on marijuana edibles. But Fowler says when there was no immediate impact, Goodman kept downing these marijuana-infused candy edibles until he had eaten 5 times the recommended dosage. Hours later, Luke Goodman was paying the price.
He would make eye contact with us, but it was like he didn't see us. He didn't recognize our presence almost. By the very end, it was pretty weird. He seems pretty relatively incoherent.
When Goodman was left alone, he got his gun and shot himself in the head.
So that's what we're seeing, guys. It's not stuff that's reported typically because the news doesn't cover suicide. A lot of these look like suicides, but they're not suicides, guys. They're literally losing their mind because they put this high-potency THC. It's not marijuana. It's high-potency THC into their system. It's just crazy what we're seeing. And that's just one example of many that I could share with you. But again, guys, you need to understand this is what's happening. This is what the marijuana industry has been very successful at. They're telling everybody it's a plant, and they're telling everybody you've made millions of dollars, so these other states are looking at it because we made millions. We aren't making money. We're losing so much money in so many other places. Yes?
Are you getting this message?
Absolutely.
And what age?
It starts at 6th grade all the way. All of our curriculum has this stuff. Yes? Again, with this high-potency THC, they're actually learning that the brain is not recovering even after you started using. That's some of the early stuff. Again, we don't know the longevity because it hasn't been around a long time yet. But I can tell you some of the early studies. A lot of studies are currently coming out of Europe, and Europe has done a lot of studies because it's been legalized in that area a little bit longer. they're finally starting to do some studies, and they're showing that some of the brain is not recovering from this high-potency THC.
Is there a reason you don't start this until 6?
It's just, again, time frame. We initially started our program in 2009 in middle schools, and then we realized we had a little bit more time, and we got more requests in high schools initially, but then we went back because we pulled the DARE program, so then we went back to elementaries. Again, it's just a matter of we only have so many officers. We are encouraging, again, to pick up stuff earlier if we can, but again, we only can do what we can do. We're only a few of us.
I do know that some elementary schools, I mean, my fourth grader last year told me about bullying because I asked him what it was, and he said, Mom, you can see it in they're teaching it in elementary school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in all of our schools, unfortunately, guys. It's not something that's just in middle school or just in high school. It's all over. CHS is another side effect of it. We've all heard about throwing up when you drink. Well, it's the same thing with high potency THC. You will throw up uncontrollably. The doctor here, he did a study, Dr. Andrew, over 10,000 emergency visits to just his hospitals alone. He did this study from 2014 to 2016, I believe it was, all marijuana related. CHS was one of those, that on top of the marijuana psychosis that I just showed you. But CHS is where you're throwing up uncontrollably. You go to the emergency room, and one of the first things doctors are asking, are you using high potency THC? Yeah, stop using that. Guess what you stop doing? You stop throwing up, ironically enough. But it lasts a lot longer in your system than alcohol. Other ones we talk about, obviously the opioid crisis is huge. It's not as big here in the state of Colorado, but guys, it is existing and does exist here still. The other big fear with this is the fentanyl. Fentanyl is being laced in our marijuana. It's being laced in a lot of things. And really, it's only 2 granules of, looks like 2 granules of salt of fentanyl that can actually kill you. It's the synthetic version of an opioid, but it can kill you. There was enough, we had 2 busts last year. One of them was enough to kill every American. It was several thousand pounds of fentanyl. It's typically coming from China. So this is one of those, it's a synthetic, it's, again, manufactured, and it's crazy what that fentanyl is doing. But again, it's the first time in 2018 that you were more likely to die from an opioid than a car crash. First time ever that we had drugs succeed car crashes. Other drugs, obviously, alcohol is still number one. If you have alcohol in your home or marijuana in your home, your kid is more likely to use it. Adderall is another one that's out there. Ecstasy, we've seen in our schools. LSD, acid, cocaine. We had a big thing with cocaine last year in our schools. I'm not sure, again, schools just started this year. Haven't seen anything really yet. Meth is out there as well. It's not as predominant here. It's more predominant in other areas, rural areas of our county. But again, for whatever reason, we started seeing some cocaine. But these are just different drugs that we're seeing in our schools.
Are you using Adderall as like a coverall for ADHD drugs, or is it specifically Adderall?
Well, Adderall is the primary one we see because that's an ADHD drug that kids have. And when kids do come up to us and talk to us, well, is it okay to take it? If you're diagnosed with ADHD, it helps you stay focused. But if you don't have ADHD, it does the opposite. It's completely different. It is called a study drug. A lot of where we see a bigger problem with it is actually in colleges or universities throughout our state. But again, it is a drug that is out there. It's in our schools.
That's why, are you using Adderall as the cover name for all of the ADHD?
Well, we talk about the other ones. I just put it in here for this one. We talk about Ritalin and the other ones that are out there. Another one, back to Mike Donahue, he brings up this. We talk about shelf. Again, do you know your child's goals and dreams? Kids need to keep reaching for this top shelf is his ultimate thought on this, because look at the lower shelf. These lower shelves are easier to reach for. The hard shelf to reach for is dreams and goals. And the minute your kid stops reaching for those dreams and goals, whether it's playing football or whatever it was, we got to teach them to start reaching for that top. Because when kids aren't playing football anymore or whatever, I see this all the time. Kids were playing football or sports or even in band in middle school, but by the time they're in high school, guys, they stop reaching for this top shelf because they're reaching right here. The minute your kid stops reaching for this top shelf, you need to start asking, why aren't you reaching for the top shelf? Because again, even though you're on the bottom shelf, guys, you still have value. It's because you don't see value in yourself, or maybe something, again, some of your ingredients got messed up in life. What's going on in your life? We get back into that conversation. Okay, being aware as a parent, understand the clothing. A lot of these clothings are made, this is right in our own area. We took these pictures actually a couple years ago. We probably need to do it again because there's probably new clothes, but they stash their stash pots in this hat. Right here, it's right in the tongue of the shoe. Pay attention to those names. Diamond, obviously that looks correlated to Bob Marley and drugs. Here's some more. Cookie, 710. We all know about 420, but does anybody know what 710 is? That's the extract. July 10th. July 10th, but look at it upside down, it spells oil. Same thing. Everybody knows 420, but you don't know 7. If your kid's wearing 710, maybe something else is going on. Molly, that's just, again, another name. Scooby Snacks, another one that's out there. Those types of things might be on t-shirts. Unfortunately, Colorado, if you see that in neighboring states, it's actually a bad thing. People are correlating it straight with marijuana. It's not, I love Colorado. No, I love Colorado's pot. So look for these types of things going on with your child. Again, who are they hanging out with? These ads are going after them. Kids, again, they don't like looking foolish and dumb. Some of those things that we get into, I talk about the emotional side. I actually bring up a former, well, he's not even a former friend, he's still a friend of mine, but unfortunately Mike was a football teammate of mine, also a track and basketball player that I was with in high school. Great kid, had great potential, could have went on to play college football, I think. However, unfortunately, he started using drugs and selling drugs in our school. He ended up getting kicked off the, on the basketball team, he got busted for smoking marijuana on the bus. Didn't get kicked off, but in track, he did get kicked off the team. So much so that even after school, he ended up marrying his high school sweetheart, but unfortunately, he lost his high school sweetheart and his daughter because he transformed from what was alcohol and marijuana, the gateway drugs, and turned to meth. He was manufacturing it in his own home when he got busted, and he ended up in federal prison. Great kid, and this is what I always try to tell kids. It doesn't matter who you are. Any kid can be affected by this. I have some great friends that were affected by this. Drugs will take that over. The appearance after drugs, these are, again, some of the things we like to share. One I wish we had was marijuana. We don't really have one for marijuana, but I can tell you guys, I've taught kids in elementary school, and I watch them, as I mentioned, all the way through high school, and I see when kids have picked up marijuana because their appearance changes. And I wish I had a picture of them when they were in elementary school, and I could take a picture of them when they're now in middle school or high school and using marijuana, because they don't look the same. They look disheveled, they look different, they act different, they don't care about school. Again, they're not reaching for the top shelf. So check your child's digital history. Again, a lot of times when they're using drugs, you're going to see that. Behavior changes, know their contents of their bedroom. There's actually in the bedroom, we used to have, I don't know if there's some locally outside of our county now that I know do those. It shows parents where they can hide. Smart Now, Colorado, we actually had some of those over here. Some of you I see have them, but they actually, again, have ways for you to speak to your child about that. Please use them. They are right here. They have helpful tips. Tall Cop says stop. He goes around and talks about drugs. That's where a lot of those clothing that we saw, he comes around and talks to us. Why do I bring this up, guys? This is my brother. My brother, unfortunately, made one of those mistakes. My brother never made it home one night. 19 years old, he was drinking legally at a bar, dropped off his girlfriend, but my brother never made it home. He died drinking and driving. Guys, nobody should ever have to face this. Rick was a good guy. My brother, Rick Martin, was a great guy. He saved my life. Because had he not died, I don't know if I'd be standing here right now. I might have had a different path in life. He changed me. I was 13 at the time. At 13 years old, guys, my brother changed me because I answered the phone that morning. At 13 years old. I'll never forget handing the phone to my dad as I told him, I said, they just said, your brother's been in a very serious accident. I need to talk to your parents. He might not make it. 2 days after Thanksgiving is when this occurred. Thanksgiving was never the same in my house. 3 days after his funeral, my 6'4" brother was cremated. They knocked on the door and they handed me my 6'4" brother in a box. So there I am at 13 years old holding my 6'4" brother in a box. It changed me for the rest of my life. He's the reason why I put this uniform on. He's the reason why I come and talk to your kids. He's the reason why I enjoy what I do here. And he's the reason why he saved my life, because I don't know if my life would have been entirely different. Guys, we have to make a change. These are some of, oops, come back there. These are some of the hotlines if you want to take a snap of that. Different things. We've got human trafficking, suicide. Phyllis Harvey handles our suicide prevention program. She has a lot of them that if you want to talk to her afterwards, there's different ones you can go to. You want to mention them real quick?
Sure. The table in the back has some information about the suicide prevention work that we do. We have a 3-hour class that's appropriate for anybody who is 15 or older, and it's free. So there's a flyer back there for one that we're having in November at Skyridge. So you're welcome to register, sign up for that.
Okay. And again, it's just about, again, I thank you guys for coming here. I hope you share the information. We have another one the 12th of next month. It's the same as this one. Like I said, the ones that are going to be more individualized, I'm doing one I know of already because my principal already asked me, one of my elementary principals at Stone Mountain. But again, there'll be other ones, and we'll put those out through our website as well. Again, go to dfinow.org if you want some other parent information. We try to update that app sheet every 6 months. There's other resources there for you. But please share this with other parents that aren't here today. Yes? Yeah, it's still our program, more than likely. I said myself, Jay Carnes here in the back goes to some of them. We have Larson. Yeah, he teaches our program as well. Yes. So we have ones in Castle Rock, Parker as well. Yes. Yes.
You know, when you, if many speeding tickets and then they can take it to the driving course,
Yes.
why can't they make some parents go to these?
It's actually why we're doing it once a month here right now. I was just talking to George about it. And that's what we're trying to do. I was just talking to George right as we started this class. We've already been working with the DA's office, but I think George is probably going to make that happen now, where parents are going to be mandated to actually come here. If their kid gets busted for sexting, cyberbullying, their parents are going to be mandated to come to one of our parent academies.
And our probation department has been doing that for a couple of years. So if their child ends up on probation, the parents are mandated to come to a parent academy.
Yeah, but George, like I said, I literally, right, because I didn't know George was coming today, and we're trying to get to that spot. Thank you.